Hey, it's the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim. And that is my first, I got to say, my buddy Zach in the middle of our screen here today. Zach, hello. Good to have you here.
Tim?
Yeah, good to see you. And, of course, Zach and I have to say hello to the brand new dad over there on the far left-hand side of my computer screen today. Ryan Nelson Kane. 4 days into fatherhood. You don't look worse for wear. You look great. How are you?
This is the first hot meal I've eaten in 3 days.
Did you forget how to cook?
Just haven't had time to eat.
How is that possible? You didn't do any work that first day or so, right? I mean, it was all Lauren doing all the work. I mean, come on.
Yeah, as she sits in the bed and recovers, I changed about 45 diapers this weekend. I'm the only one who can get up and do it on a whim, so she's got to sit and recover. I'll handle all the business overnight, and I have hot food. I just don't have time to sit and eat it while it's hot, so everything gets cold, and then I eat it. So once everybody else is set, she gets to eat, he gets to eat, and then I get to eat. So,
for the record, our two little guys are 3 and 2, and I don't know if Caitlin's eaten a hot meal in 3 years.
Fair enough. I'm on that path, and that's okay. I'm all right. I'm the one who likes cold food, so I'll live with it.
I love cold food, so it doesn't matter to me. Ryan is going to be gone are the days of Ryan's connoisseur. Like, he's not going to think about food the way he used to. He used to be like, oh, I'm going to make a fine bolognese with a little bit of a wine reduction, then I'm going to do a little gastrique of something. None of that anymore. Those days are over. There's no gastriques. There's none of that stuff happening. It's just going to be a lot of whatever's cold and in front of you.
I bought guanciale and pecorino romano, and I'm making a carbonara this week.
You are not making that. It's not happening. You're going to
It's
eat that
25-minute meal.
Just cold as it is.
25-minute meal. And it's not for me. Let's be really clear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So good to see you both. We weren't sure Ryan was going to be here, but, hey, hats off to you. Everything went well on the pregnancy. Everything went well on the birth. Everything went well through the hospital. And on schedule, and Vikes are getting run out at Lincoln Financial here early, which is great. We're recording this on a Monday night, 8 o'clock Central Time, Midwest time zone. So Jalen Hurts is acting like John Unitas right now, and meanwhile the Bills are also up on the Titans in the third quarter. So we'll give you updates on that as we go through the pod, even though you'll have those answers long before this pod gets up.
Yep. It's nice to see primetime Kirk show up again.
Yeah, it's just when you thought you'd miss it. You thought, oh, man, when are we going to see him again? Nope, he's right there. Don't worry about it, everybody. Doesn't matter who the coach is. Primetime Kirk is still primetime Kirk. But anyway, it's still young.
One thing, if you're a Vikings fan, if there's one thing we've learned this weekend, it's that no lead is safe. So
that is probably, you're right, the theme of the weekend. So much so. This weekend was so weird, Zach.
Unless, of course, you're playing the Chicago Bears, then the lead is probably safe.
Well, you get up 3-0. That lead's probably pretty safe. No, Ryan. This weekend was so weird in the league, Zach. Ryan already was the first one to throw out "This is why people think the NFL is scripted" tweet that came out about the middle of Sunday afternoon. The conspiracy theories came out early.
Let's be really clear. I don't believe the NFL is scripted, but it was a lot of fodder for the people who believe it is.
That's fair.
It was a wild weekend, though, Zach. We had a lot of come-from-behind victories, things like that. Were you taken aback, taken surprised by anything in particular? Obviously, there were a few surprises, but anything that really stuck out?
Well, I think what stuck out the most for us was some of the coaching decisions down the stretch seemed pretty questionable.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's 10 good coaches in the league. Like, I'm concerned. There's some bad coaching. And even if it's not bad head coaching, bad defensive coordinator decisions, bad offensive play calls, lots of stuff going on in the first.
A Jalen Reagor sighting.
Very rare.
Well, you knew that was coming in Philadelphia.
He got booed his first punt return.
Look, I don't know why you boo a guy who's doing his best and it doesn't work out. It's not like he, trash talked the team on his way out.
That's fair.
Do we know he did his best?
Well, I don't know. It's not like it was Devontae Adams trying to take a hatchet to Green Bay on his way out.
Devontae Adams, who now seems disgruntled in Vegas.
Maybe this is a great way to say that the grass is greener It's not always greater. You're gonna think it is, but
skipped out on the post-game press conference.
It's never a good start.
Out of the locker room before the media gets in there. It's 0-2.
Yeah.
I just think he said he went from one Hall of Fame quarterback to another.
I wonder if he regrets that comment. That comment feels a little. I know that him and Carr are boys, and
you say that, Zach. You remind me of that as I think about the throw in the dirt into double coverage at the end of that game yesterday. There's Derek Carr, Hall of Fame quarterback, throws into the dirt with a chance to get down the field.
Yeah, the play before there at the end, he just terrible.
Right? I think he was probably more disgruntled at Hunter Renfrow at the end of the game, though, because Hunter Renfrow just for some reason can't seem to hang on to the football. I guess since we're talking about that, let's start there. I guess because it feels to me like that game was so weird. That was probably the weirdest game of the day, even though I didn't think anything was going to top Miami and Baltimore or Cleveland and the Jets. And then we get this game where I was texting you guys that I thought the Cardinals were like the worst. I was like, let's nominate the Cardinals. Arizona's the worst team I've ever seen. They're horrible. Kyler Murray looks done. Forget it. And I'm still ready to hang on to some of those ideas. But to watch that game turn, the Raiders were up 23-7. They're popping champagne in the stands at Allegiant. I mean, people are sitting there with bottles of champagne, and they're popping it 23-7, and the game gets really weird at that point. That's twice, though, now in a couple weeks where the Raiders kind of just seem I mean, they're not bad. They're in it. They fought back, and they had a chance against the Chargers. And then they had a lead that was safe enough to should have been good enough to win, and they kind of gack it away. I don't know what to make of that Raiders team. It looks, but it's not a good start.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you look at the coaching of Josh McDaniels, and you kind of wonder if maybe they just haven't. If the tires are spinning, if the tread just hasn't caught yet, right? If you're a quarterback and you've got arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, and you throw the ball to him only a handful of times, he only had 5 or 6 targets that game.
He had 2 catches total.
He had two catches total. Just an awful game from Derek Carr again. Just inexcusable. Not getting the ball to your best receiver at all. And it's not like he wasn't open. There were opportunities to get him the ball, and they just didn't get him the ball. Instead, you're handing it to Josh Jacobs. I don't understand the decision making. And then defensively to completely melt down at the end of that game and just gets totally shell shocked, and to have nobody on that coaching staff that can pull the reins back and say, guys, we got to get our heads back in this game. We're no longer winning. I mean, it was just a tragedy of errors at the end of that game.
Yeah, they give up. Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
Well, no, go ahead. You finish your thought on this one.
Well, I was just going to throw the score out there. I mean, you're up 23-7. You give up 16 unanswered in the fourth quarter, plus you give up the 6 in overtime on the scoop and score. You get outscored 22-0 in basically the last 10 minutes of that game. I just there seems to be a defensive, like a big issue on defense late in games on how to close games. We saw that not just in this Raiders game, but we saw it all over the league yesterday. And I thought that it just seemed like that was par for the course.
Well, I thought the issues on Cleveland closing was even worse.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
right? Joe Wood should be fired.
They were up with like a minute and a half to go.
Yep.
Yeah, up 14. Yeah, that was so egregious because you give up a. Usually we're not big advocates of the prevent defense, but Zach, this is probably when you would use a prevent defense, I would assume, is like up 14 with a minute and a half to go. You're basically just saying no deep passes, no end zone. Like, I would assume that's your philosophy there.
Just keep tackling them in bounds. And yeah, it's baffling some of the decisions that were made. And it happened across many games. And the problem, I think, is the way teams play offense. It is almost a bigger piece of it than the defense.
Yep. It does feel like there's a lack of ball control that's happening on these teams. Everybody wants to throw the ball. I don't understand it. right? We're trying all these cute little plays and trying to get the ball, 5-6 yards down the field and run the clock that way. Just run the ball. This isn't rocket science. It's worked for 50 years.
Yeah, right, and you don't have to fool someone there. Like, even if it doesn't work and you run the ball and timeouts are taken or clock is run, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Because now our defense has less time that they have to defend. And I don't know. So I think that part of it's the way teams are playing offense now.
Yeah.
And I understand some of the pass heavy stuff, and I understand leading into it, but you have to be able to adjust with 3 minutes left in the game.
Right. The same way you have to adjust when you're down defensively, you have to adjust offensively when you're up. And it doesn't feel like teams are willing to adjust offensively. They play their game plan throughout the game, and it just feels like that's how they're losing, right? Because it just stops working at some point, because defensive adjustments do come. I don't know. It feels it's a bit frustrating to watch, both as a fan of the game and as a guy who sits on a podcast and talks about it. It's frustrating to watch because these are the guys you expect to be making the right decisions. I expect these kinds of meltdowns on Saturday. I don't expect them on Sunday.
It's fascinating to me that, like, I watched that Browns game, I watched the Ravens game, I watched the Raiders and the Raiders game as well, and I'm starting to think, and that still wasn't the worst coaching display. I still wonder if the worst coaching display came from a team that actually won. What we're seeing in Denver through 2 weeks is damn near frightening. I know you sent the fun meme today in our group chat, Zach, but it's pretty close, right? Like, this is about Nathaniel Hackett. Might be a great coach, and I'm not saying fire him, give up, blah blah blah. But through 2 weeks, if there's one coach that right now looks a bit out over his skis, it's him.
Well, and yet I said he still might be the second best coach in the division.
He still might be. I know, that's frightening. But
right?
He seems so lost right now.
I mean, because we're not exactly beating down the door to get Josh McDaniel.
Yeah, we still don't know if Brandon Staley is a good coach yet.
Right. Well, I think we've decided that Brandon Staley's made a lot of mistakes, too.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chargers might be the second most talented team. They might be the most talented team, frankly, in that division. And they're not playing like it. And that's an indictment on their coaching staff.
I just look at the Hackett thing, and I'm like, they had 13 penalties at home. And how many of them were pre-snap penalties? They got 100 yards in penalties against the Texans, to the point where their home fans are counting down the play clock for them so that they can get the plays off in time. I mean, that is egregious.
It did kind of have a Royal Rumble vibe to it, didn't it?
It did.
The crowd starts going nuts at 5.
They go nuts at 5, and all of a sudden the Rocks music hits. And in Denver,
I know. I kept waiting for, like, who's coming out next. It's like, oh, it's the kicker. But then on top of that, here's the other part that's so bizarre to me. There was this one play. I caught this on Red Zone. I don't know if you guys saw this at all. But it's like, so they're on the 35 or the 36. As Goose goes nuts over at Ryan's house.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I love it.
This dog's insane.
Well, you added a kid to the equation, and he's got high anxiety. Look what you did. What were you thinking? Anyway, so they're at the 36-yard line. They're sitting there hemming and hawing about what to do, what kind of play should they send in. They get a delay a game. They back it up to the 41. They call a timeout, and then they bring in the punt unit. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. Last week, you said just get to the 46-yard line, and we'll kick a field goal to win it. And that was without being a mile in the air, a mile high with all the thin air up there. And now you're saying at the 41 in your home stadium you can't kick a field goal, you have to punt? I'm lost. I'm lost on Nathaniel Hackett right now.
I don't remember who said it, but someone said you hire coaches and you hire coordinators, and Hackett's coming across as a coordinator right now.
I agree. I agree there's been some of that, but let's not over panic here with 2 games.
Right. I'm not, like I said, I'm not calling for his job. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good coach. He might be a great coach. And that's why I do urge patience on all of this, right? Everything. Just like when last week when Kevin O'Connell won their first game for the Vikings, I was kind of like, again, hey, credit where credit's due. The Vikings came out prepared. They looked focused. They had a good game plan. They executed it. But let's not call him Bud Grant yet. Right? Let's before we start getting him fitted for a purple coat in the Viking Ring of Honor, and before we start doing all that, let's calm down and let some things play out. Flip side that with Nathaniel Hackett, right? 2 games in, hasn't been a good 2 games. The good news is you won one of them. It could be worse. You could be 0-2, and you're not. So let's hang in there. But there's some stuff that does absolutely need to clean up.
But I'll give you a long-term comparison on this too. Mike Zimmer had a good first couple of years in Minnesota, and people crowned him the next Bud Grant. But we all know in hindsight, he was a glorified coordinator, right? That was one of the dings on him, halfway through his time in Minnesota early on was, this guy doesn't seem like he gets the entire game. And I mean, that it's not an indictment. You hope he can grow into it if you're talking about Hackett, but we might be looking at that kind of situation here, and you hope you're not. You don't write it off after 2 games like Zach said, but there is some of that to this where you can tell early. You know what I mean?
How much of this too though falls on Russell Wilson?
That's a great point.
That's another great point. Yeah, because he was not good yesterday.
A dynamic leader there at quarterback that would help solve some of these issues.
At one point in yesterday's game, he was like 4 for 19 to start the game, or 4 for 20, and that's not getting it done. Not for the money you're paying him. Now, again, I understand. Judy was out of the lineup. They had some other things happen during the course of the game, but
that shouldn't be an excuse.
That's unacceptable. Right? That's unacceptable.
You look at the weapons that they have in Denver, not just Judy, but you've got Cortland Sutton, you've got KJ Hamler, you've got Javonte Williams, you've got Melvin Gordon. Those are 4 guys who can move the sticks for you, and they're not doing it. They're not getting the ball effectively into their players' hands. And then defensively, they look okay, but they're not holding teams to the places where they need to be holding them the entire game. They are breaking down at certain parts of the game. Their pass rush isn't as good as it used to be. So Denver is a team that came in that looked like they might be pretty good, and we're left with more questions than answers at this point in the season.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Zach. I think the Russell Wilson piece of this is just as important. I think, people are killing Hackett, and rightfully so. Like I said, that comes with the territory of being the head coach. You're going to get torn apart for decisions and clock management and all of that sort of thing. But it's fair to point out that Russell Wilson just isn't the same guy, like based on the evidence we're seeing, right? Through 2 weeks, he's just not the guy. He hasn't been the guy for 2-3 years, right? This guy who emerged as one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league, 5-6 years ago, he has not been that guy for a while. And I think it's still manifesting itself that way in the first 2 weeks for Denver.
Yep.
Some other scores real quick as we work our way around and start getting into the headlines of the league. Since we last left you, we certainly have to wait for the Eagles-Vikings game to get you our full results on predictions. But heading into tonight, Zach went 3-1 through the first 4. Ryan went 1-3, and I am at 2-2 through the first 4 games of predictions. We'll get our set of predictions here tonight. Chiefs beat the Chargers 27-24 back last Thursday. Jets did come from had that one almost. Jets beat the Browns 31-30. We mentioned that one. The Lions over the Commanders 36-27. Carson Wentz again, big box score, 337 and 3 touchdowns, but they were not in that game for a long, long time. I thought the Lions played a really good game. I was really impressed.
100%.
Amon-Ra St. Brown he looks like a stud. Just looks like a stud. Interesting game. The Bucs beat the Saints. Tom was throwing Microsoft pads and yelling at everybody. There was a fight in the middle of that game. The game was 3-3 in the fourth quarter. Are you, either one of you guys, maybe both of you, are you encouraged by the Bucs win or discouraged more by the Saints not being able to win that game when you consider all the Bucs guys that were out? I mean, I don't know what to make of that after that last game because Tom didn't look great. It was a pretty ugly situation.
Well, Tom never looks good against the Saints, but also I just don't think the Saints are that good.
Yeah.
I think
that's what I pulled from that game too.
And I mean, great decision by the NFL to suspend Mike Evans for a week. That seems like a smart decision.
Yeah, that'll teach him.
Only because then you don't have to see him for the Green Bay game this weekend. That is so.
Oh, is that who we play this week?
Oh, really? Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
Let me check the notes. Let me see here. Just double check. Oh, yeah, that's right. You're playing the Packers this weekend. So no Mike Evans for the Green Bay game. So there you go. You got that. Also, interesting. Bruce Arians isn't the coach anymore, right? Like, can we confirm that Bruce Arians is not the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers anymore? Then what the hell is he doing on the damn sidelines walking around with Todd Bowles like he is? I get that he's an advisor, all that. Get up in the goddamn press box and stay there. You're not on the sidelines anymore. Stop this.
Head coach emeritus.
I mean, what is that?
I got to tell you, though, the coming into that game, I thought the Saints were going to win that game. And because of the record against them, against the Bucs, and because of how they matched up, and because it was at home. It feels like the Saints don't lose at home very often just because of the advantage that you have in the Superdome, and they always tend to play better on that surface for whatever reason. But, man, they just don't seem like they're that good this year. That defensively, it feels like, they can hold up for a while, and then all of a sudden, they'll give up a big play here and there, or they completely lose their cool, and they get into a fight, and they're just, I don't know what's going on with Dennis Allen, but it looks like that mid 2000s Raiders teams.
Do you think that? I mean, I don't think he's been set up to succeed here.
No, I don't think so either.
And they still have issue at quarterback.
Yeah,
right. Say what you want about Jameis, but he's
the
he's
pick
not,
six he threw. The pick six he threw that sealed the game was about as bad. Was as bad a throw as you could do. I mean, that was as bad a pass.
I think that they're just not good, right? And I also did laugh too, when you said he's marching around on the sidelines for the Bucs with Todd Bowles. It made me think of like when you give your little brother the Nintendo controller for Player 2. Like, do you think he had a headset on, but he could hear everything, but he couldn't actually talk to anyone? And they just, like, oh sure, Bruce, here you go, put the headset on again.
He's calling in plays over there, and he's covering the microphone, but nobody can
hear him. He's walking around, he's talking shit to Marshawn Lattimore, like he's right at the center of all that Mike Evans stuff in the fight. If you go back and look, like he's talking shit to the Saints players, and he's right in the center of it. It's like, bro, get your ass up to the press box. Don't come down here. What are you doing? It's like, get out of here.
I don't think that either team in that game is particularly good right now. Are the Bucs the worst 2-0 team in the league right now?
New York Giants.
Yeah, I still feel like they're better than the New York Giants.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, no disrespect to the Giants. No disrespect to the Giants. 2-0. I take my hat off to Brian Daboll. That's fantastic what they've done so far.
I mean, and in fairness, there's only 4 2-0 teams right now.
Yeah, could be 6 at the end, and there will for sure be 5 because the winner of the
and there's going to be 6. The Bills are blowing out.
Yeah, they're blowing. Yeah, they're 20 on the Titans right now.
They're up 20. The Titans just turned it over again.
Yeah, that game's over. You're right.
So, I think that. Yeah, I mean, Tampa's going to be okay, but they're in a bad division.
Yeah, Tampa could have that division won in November with how bad that division is.
There's a reason I took them as early as I did in our team challenge. They're going to win a lot of games in a bad division.
Yeah, heady. It's very heady. You're seeing it clearly. By the way, can I say something about the Bucs with Tom? Like, I love Tom, right? I've been a Tom guy for 20-some years, as you know. Ryan rolled his eyes, but he knows it's true.
No. I was looking at you.
I thought you were rolling your eyes at me talking about Tom.
No.
Has Tom eaten anything in like 6 weeks? Like, I swear to God, something like Tom at the beginning of training camp didn't have full cheekbones, and now that's like all he is cheekbones. Like,
he looks like Skeletor.
Yeah, like I kind of want to go with like somebody needs to pull Tom aside and say like, look, hey, is Alex Guerrero around? No, here, quick, eat this chicken sandwich. Like here, eat this quarter pounder with cheese. Like, you just need something. You need something.
This is what you get when the start of your day every day is tearing your shirt in two and rubbing ashes on your face so that your wife will take you back.
God.
Just a complete lack of focus.
I'm just saying it doesn't look like he's eating. he doesn't look healthy. Like, I know that, whatever, maybe he is healthy and he's pliable and I love Tom, but, dude, it's okay to have a dad bod at 45. It's okay. Like, just put a little something on it. Like, come on.
Look at what Peyton Manning did before he retired. That guy was never in shape. That guy looked like he got out of the game and he went and he had a beer with Jared Lorenzen before he died.
Stop that. Don't you pick on Jared. Don't say you can't sully the Hefty Lefty's name on this podcast. How dare you?
You know what? I'll own that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Other scores.
Apologies.
You mentioned the Giants did win their game 19-16 over the Panthers. Panthers 0-2. Patriots beat the Steelers in what was just a kind of a laugher offensively for the Steelers. They just looked terrible. The Jags blew out the Colts 24-0. 42-38 Dolphins come from behind, and Coach Spicoli rallies the troops in what was the game of the early part of the day. They were down 35-14 in the fourth quarter. Tua comes alive and plays great. Through the first half of that game, I was wondering if Tua was going to be starting in week 3 or 4. Like, I was concerned. But he blew up, and I have to tip my cap. He played fantastic in the second half, fourth quarter of that game.
Yeah, I mean, he looked great. The receiving core in Miami looks like it might be legit. But obviously, you have to ask the question if the opponents were up to the task that game, because Baltimore's defense does not look like they have traditionally.
But there's legitimate speed that Miami has at wide.
Sure.
Those two guys are legitimately frightening, scary to play
against. It's what we talked about last week, right? That both the Chiefs can be really good and Tyreek Hill can be really good.
Yeah.
Right? And Tyreek Hill is
really good. Yeah, he's really
He's
good.
just not worth the money he wanted from Kansas City.
Or Kansas City couldn't pay him. Like, there was no way they could give him that money.
That's what I'm saying, though, right?
Kansas City.
He wasn't worth that money.
Yeah. But
if you got the quarterback on the rookie deal.
That's true. Then you can do that. And the speed with him and Waddle, like I said, combined, they might be the most frightening, speed-wise, wide receiver tandem in the league. I don't know a lot of two receiver tandems that are as scary as that. That was pretty good, what they put on yesterday. That was impressive. They
both had 200 yards or 400 yards and 4 touchdowns between them. Was that the number?
Yeah, it was like 170 something each or whatever it was. It was some ungodly number. And Gesicki made a hell of a touchdown catch. Yes. That was off the charts from a tight end. So they've got some weapons, and if Tua can start hitting guys consistently like that Dolphins team could be scary, and Coach Spicoli might be onto something. Some other scores. The 49ers beat the Seahawks. We do have to talk about that for just a minute. I know Rams beat Falcons too, but who cares? Trey Lance breaks his ankle, out for the season. I texted this to the group last night, Ryan. I said this to you, and I think you commented too. I feel bad for Trey Lance here. I really do. But I got to draw a line. If I'm the Niners, I'm not sure. Now, they might be stuck. The Niners might have to bring him back next year with no choice, because I don't know if they have any options. But I don't know if you can play 120 snaps in 4 or 5 years and be good. I just don't know if that's a thing. Those are major developmental snaps that he didn't get in his last year and a half of college, and he hasn't gotten in the pros. I'm concerned. Zach is shaking his head. Go ahead, Zach.
So I'm just shaking my head because Jalen Hurts is just dominating this first half. I do think you have to worry about it with the Trey Lance thing. I mean, it was a risk when they took him.
Right.
It was a risk.
It was a gamble right away.
And then to move up to do it, and I don't know. I mean, but like you said, what are their other options? They're not going to go back with Jimmy G again.
Nope.
Right? This is the last dance. And Jimmy's going to end up starting somewhere next year, I think.
Well, based on what we're seeing so far in this league, yeah. Joe Flacco found a spot.
Back to the playoffs again.
Yeah. I think they're going to be just fine with him.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you got to look around the league and say, hey, there's a lot of teams that could do a lot worse than him.
I agree.
Even if you want to start Jimmy for 2 years and do the same thing, we're going to draft someone, and we're going to have Garoppolo start for the next 2 years.
I mean, if you're a team like I'm going to throw a team out there, right? If you're a team like Indianapolis,
Oh,
would you
God.
rather have Jimmy G or would you rather have Matt Ryan right now?
Well, I don't know why they didn't pull off the Jimmy G thing before Matt Ryan. Why they opted to go down. I mean, if you're going to be starting your sixth quarterback in 6 years, go get the best one that you can go get.
Right.
Don't go get some washed up guy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm
And a washed up guy that cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
right.
It's really at least get a younger version of that. That's yes, it's expensive, but shit. I mean, he at least has some ability, still, and he's young. He's only like what, 30?
Yeah, he's not that old. If you're like, Dallas right now, you just lost your quarterback, potentially for the season. We don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back, right? Why not try and pull that trade, right? Now obviously it's a moot point because Trey Lance breaks his ankle, but at the end of last week, that if you're going to make a midseason trade, if you're Dallas, that seems like that would have been the move, right?
They had their chance. I think once they re-signed him to that cap-friendly, no franchise tag, no whatever deal, he was staying in San Francisco. I think the Niners had a gut feeling on this. Not saying that they thought Lance was going to break his ankle, but I think they hung on to Garoppolo because I think deep down they knew they weren't sure if they had the guy. And that now this ankle injury compounds that, right? Because now I think they weren't sure they had the guy before, and now I really don't think they're sure that they have the guy. And they will be looking elsewhere, either in free agency or in the draft next year. That's what I think. And again, I just don't think you can count on Lance at this point because I just think these are the pivotal developmental years for the quarterback, and he hasn't been out there. He just hasn't played. And he's not going to play again.
Yeah, I just don't think that I just don't think the development's there. I agree with you, Tim.
So I think that's kind of the last. Oh, a couple more scores. Yes, Cowboys beat the Bengals. Bengals are 0-2 to start the year. Cooper Rush did get a win. He's 2-0 as a starting quarterback. Just pointing that out. We mentioned the Broncos beating the Texans, Cardinals beating the Raiders, and of course the Green Bay Packers all over the Chicago Bears last night. They dominated the second quarter of that game and ran away from the Bears. Justin Fields looks
bad.
Just not requisite of an NFL quarterback right now. Now Ryan is not ready to give up. Ryan is standing firm in his belief in Justin Fields. But is this a situation where we just don't believe this is going to work in Chicago, that he can't play there? Or do we have to give Luke Getsy some time to try to turn this thing around with Eberflus?
I'm going to say something that might rile some people up if they're listening in the Chicago area or if they're Bears fans. I think the Bears are fundamentally incapable of developing a quarterback regardless of their potential. I just don't think that as an organization, they have shown absolutely no ability to be able to, regardless of coaching staff, to develop and retain a quarterback who can take them there. They just haven't been able to do it. So, and I say that as a Vikings fan. We've done the same thing, right? The Vikings have been just as good with quarterbacks as the Bears. When we've signed better free agents, right? We've done better in that regard. We've acknowledged that we can't develop a rookie quarterback. But for the love of God, the Bears are awful. And they took who I thought was arguably the best quarterback prospect in the draft that he was taken, and they've completely driven him into the ground. He is not the player that he was at Ohio State. He doesn't have the swagger and the confidence that he had at Ohio State. And that is such a huge part of playing quarterback, is that confidence and the ability to know that you can make the throw and to make it confidently. And he just doesn't have it. It might change in a different situation. It might not. We won't know, but it's not going to happen in Chicago.
Remember when he said the game was slow for him?
Yeah.
Looked really slow for him last night.
Yeah.
He looked overwhelmed. That first drive, he looked great, but again, we've seen this all the time, right? Get off the 15 scripted plays and let's see how good you are. And, I think we saw this with a lot of guys. A lot of guys in the 15 plays can be really good. And then when it comes down to you got to improvise now, you got to adjust. People make adjustments to you. Can you figure it out? We have not seen that step from Justin Fields.
He wasn't all that good during the scripted part either.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they drove it down the field with that first possession. It was a really good opening possession.
Right,
really
but I sent you that stat where it it was like 40% of his passing yards came on the flea flicker.
Yeah, it's true.
They're a Soldier Field swamp game away from 0-2. They're awful.
I'm concerned. And the fact is, like, none of their and I'm not saying they have great skill players, but like they ran the ball with Montgomery pretty well last night. Can't find Darnell Mooney with a searchlight. You mentioned
Cole Kmet doesn't have a catch yet.
Cole Kmet doesn't have a catch. I mean, that's frightening to hear that stat. And you're just like, I mean, we got to get something here, guys. Like, you can't just hope your defense can stop people. I mean, it doesn't work that way.
Zach and I have kids with the same level of production as Cole Kmet. And mine was born 4 days ago.
Your guy Irv Smith just dropped a 60-yard touchdown.
Oh, the Christian Watson effect, huh? It's
I think Irv Smith.
This one's even worse.
Put me in the camp that says Irv Smith is a giant bust and he's not good.
See, Irv Smith is the same problem as Jimmy G, as Trey Lance. He just hadn't played. Right?
Yeah, and at some point you've seen enough.
You don't play.
Yeah, I mean, your best ability is availability. He's never on the field.
Right. So he's been hurt the last 2 years. At some point, you've got to be on the field, and he's just not.
I'm kind of
Your
a
hands
hard.
go away if you don't use them.
I'm starting to be a hard out guy on Irv Smith.
Can we talk 2 seconds about this Vikings game?
Yes, go ahead.
I know it's in progress and stuff, and it's only first half. They've looked really inept tonight on offense.
Yeah.
And my question is, does that worry you now that there's now there's tape out there, we've seen what they're trying to do, that they're struggling?
I think there's 2 things at work here. I think there's some of that, right? I think McConnell will have to readjust, and it'll be a little bit of that. I also think people the Kirk Monday Night Football primetime thing is not a real thing. I think it's a real thing. Like, I just don't think Kirk's the same player at night that he is during the day. It's the Irv. I'm behind you guys. I just saw the Irv drop.
Okay.
But I do think the Kirk playing on Monday night, I legit, I think it's a thing. I really, I just don't think he does well in these pressure situations. I think that's something. I also think the Eagles might be better than we think. Like, I think they're a good team.
I think the Eagles are good too. It's just something that I think you have to wonder.
Right.
Right? I mean, by no means are we writing them off.
No, of course not.
There's a whole other half to play too, right? They could make halftime adjustments. But the point that I want to make here is maybe the most simple point that a lot of people are going to miss is I think the Eagles are just better than the Packers right now, right? They're cleaner. They're more talented. It's just right now that maybe the only downgrade position might be quarterback. And right now that might not be the case because Jalen Hurts is playing out of his mind. But they have a better wide receiver core. Their offensive line looks better. They're healthier. They're a better team than Green Bay right now. Now Green Bay is going to get better. They're younger, so that there's more growth to happen there. But from week 1 to week 2, it's a different game. And yeah, you put film on tape. They're gonna be able to watch what Green Bay couldn't. And I just think that they're better than Green Bay right now.
The Eagles got the ball on the 4-yard line, their own 4, and they just go empty and just run QB run. Not even QB drive. He just takes it and runs. He's got 250 yards of all-purpose in the first half.
Yeah, he's going bananas right now. He's having a really good game.
It's the Jalen Hurts breakout game. I mean, we might be watching not just a fantasy football Jalen Hurts. We might be watching Jalen Hurts take a step forward here. But I also think that I had my trepidation on the Vikings before the season even started. You remember the over/under pod, Zach? That I was like, I'm not sure. Like, much of this roster isn't different from last year. The only thing that's different is the coaching staff. And as much as we want to put blame on the coaching staff last year with Zim and all that, and that's fair. That's very fair to criticize those coaches. They deserve to be fired. I also think it is fair to say that some of these players may not be as good as as advertised, right? They just might not be. And I don't know if Zim's. I mean, I don't know if some of these guys are that good. They might be a 500 team with the roster that they have.
I think that was a fair assessment at the start of the year, but I think after week 1, right? Didn't a lot of people's opinions of that change?
Yeah, I think so.
Their expectations went up.
They have a base of talent, right? There are talented players that can make good plays. Obviously, you have Justin Jefferson, you have Dalvin Cook. This is really a year where I think they're trying to get a feeling for if Kirk Cousins can be the guy, and if you have to go and do that, or if it was the coaching staff or if it was Kirk, right? This game, you're probably going to look at this game so far and say, there's probably 50-50 share, blame share there, and I would agree with that. I'm not a guy who wanted to keep Kirk Cousins after last year. I thought you get rid of the whole thing and start with a new quarterback. I understand why you want to try it with him for a year. But, if we're going to talk about the Vikings for a second, we should probably mention defensively, that was their problem, right? They've been able to put points on the board the last couple of years, but their defense has been their issue. I think in the second half of this game, it would not be unlikely, in my mind, to see Cam Bynum out and Lewis Seen in, just to see if you can get some like a spark on the back end, because Bynum is having his worst game of his career right now. He's getting cooked.
Plus, I wasn't
Buffalo,
Yeah, go ahead,
Buffalo
Dak.
might win this game by 50.
Yeah, they're blowing out the Titans. And
They're
you know,
41, it's 41-7 with 3 minutes to go in the third quarter.
and Ed Donatell's our D coordinator. Ed Donatell's been fired for more than one coaching job as a D coordinator. So I'm not saying he's a bad D coordinator, but I mean, like we don't got Belichick from the Giants here. He's a longtime defensive guy who's been in the league, and we're adjusting from a 4-3 to a 3-4, right? I mean, that doesn't happen overnight, is what I'm saying. Like, those things take time, adjustment, and talent, personnel. Like, it takes players. And
Tim and I, you and I were talking about this before Zach jumped on the pod tonight. We were just kind of in the room chatting. I had no real expectations for this Vikings team coming into the year. I was pleasantly surprised in week one. My expectations definitely went up after I saw what they did to Green Bay. And I definitely think they can challenge for the division if they can play that way, obviously in the second half of this game, but, beyond that. But this is going to take a couple years, right? Coaching changes are very rarely the answer to a problem in the NFL. It's worked maybe once or twice. You can't just change a coaching staff and then have everything work, and then everything's golden and everybody stays and then they win 3 titles. It doesn't happen. There's going to be some player change. There's going to be some culture change. There's going to be a couple of years of transition here. And I think Vikings fans just need to be a little bit more patient. We're not a Super Bowl contender. We just never were. We're going to be pretty good. We're going to be competitive, but that doesn't mean you're a championship chaser. You're not in the window right now.
let's we'll keep that up. We'll watch that. Let's talk. We got a little game here. As you know, I like to say, one of my favorite phrases, Ryan, as you know, is "who could say." Who could say? I mean, we don't know the answer, right? I'm going to give you 2 choices. So I got a little toss-up game here for you. We call it "who could say," but you could call it toss-up, whatever you want. I'm going to throw 3 of these things at you guys, and I want you to tell me which one holds the water here a little bit. For example, first one, 0-2 team that you're more concerned about, the Bengals or the Raiders? Who would like to go first?
Okay, that's a tough question because I think that I thought the Bengals were better than the Raiders, and I'm more disappointed, more worried about their production. But I think that the Raiders are still going to struggle more, if that makes sense to you.
Right.
Like
I just think on paper we thought both these teams would be good at the beginning of the year, right? Expectations at the beginning.
I thought the Raiders would be better than they've looked. I don't know how I would define good, but yeah, I thought they'd be better. Also, it'd be nice if the Vikings could cover Dallas Goedert because,
Are you against him this week?
Yeah, Ty's got him. Ty's got him, and I'm clinging to like a 2-point. I have no business winning this week, but
I'm concerned about the Bengals. And Ryan, I don't know if you can agree, but I mean, you think about what they've had the first 2 weeks. At home against Pittsburgh, against Mitch Trubisky, lose. On the road at Dallas, indoors, no weather issues, against not Dak, but Cooper Rush. And you find a way to be 0-2 against both.
Yeah.
That to me is, I worry about the Super Bowl swoon. I think it's a real thing. I think when you build up so much and you get there and you lose, it's just really hard to re-ramp it up again. It's so hard. And I think we've seen that with Atlanta. They've never recovered. And now we're seeing. I worry we're seeing it with. I worry we're seeing it right now with Cincinnati, and like to a certain extent, San Francisco's had a tough time. They lose to Kansas City. They didn't make it back. They've struggled to get back where they needed to get to. It's a hard thing.
So two things on that. I think part of it is we amplified the Bengals a little bit based on last year, right? They kind of caught lightning in the bottle in the playoffs. We knew they had O-line issues. They still have O-line issues, etc. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is Malik Willis has just made his debut for the Titans.
Excellent.
Makes perfect sense. Down 41-7, that's when he needs to get in.
Yeah.
So,
I think that if I'm going to answer the question, I'm going to go with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
The offensive line, that offensive line's a problem, and you're starting to get some Andy Luck vibes from Joe Burrow, just getting shelled, right? They've got a ton of weapons. They've got a really good quarterback. Their defense and their offensive line are falling apart. And they spent a lot of money in capital to go out and fix that offensive line this offseason. And I think after 2 weeks, we can safely say that it just hasn't worked. It just hasn't worked. And he's the victim of it.
He also holds on to the ball a long time, too. I saw multiple times where it felt like that ball's got to go. That's got to go, and he's getting hit.
He was like that last year, too.
Yep.
We also have questions about their coaching.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is Zach Taylor a good coach?
We don't know that.
I think like 4 or 5 weeks into the season last year, I think you were ready to fire him, Tim.
I was. Yeah, it was like we've seen enough of Zach Taylor. Like I feel like this was like year 4 of Zach Taylor. He's 1-27 when they're trailing in the third quarter. First of all,
in the third quarter,
if you're trailing at the end of, I think it was they said that stat at the end of 3 quarters, he's 1-27 if they're behind. First of all, no coach ever gets to 1-27 if that's their record through 3 quarters. But they to the Bengals' credit, they stuck with them. They didn't just pull a quick hook, and I respect that. Let a guy kind of work himself through it. He's going to have a weird record, but it's just it's just not a very good. I'm not saying it's all Zach Taylor's fault. I'm not. But I just think there's problems there, and I don't know if they're going to get that ship righted. The good news for them is they're in a division that seems suspect, where it looks like they're going to be able to get wins, but who could say, right? I think the Bengals are in real trouble. The Raiders, I'm concerned about that too. They should be 1-1 at worst. They could easily be 2-0, but they should be 1-1 at worst. But then again, so could the Bengals.
Yeah, I just gotta. I don't know why you go and get Devontae Adams and just don't throw him the ball.
Well, they threw him the ball week 1. I mean, he had 17 targets in week 1. They were forcing it to him in week 1.
Yeah, but he's a guy you force the ball to.
I would agree with you.
2 catches ain't going to get it done. I you know what? I've already said it.
I don't know what changed. Next one. Who could say? Toss up. First coach fired. Is it Matt Rule or Frank Reich?
I think it's going to be Frank Reich. Just because I think Matt Rule still owed a ton of money, and they may just run it out through the end of the year with him.
You might be right about that.
I am also going to say Frank Reich for a different reason. I think in the NFL, expectations are the name of the game, and the Colts had higher expectations than the Panthers did, especially in the division that they're in. To get shut out as an offensive coach by the Jacksonville Jaguars, that's a problem because nobody expected anything from Jacksonville this year, right? That's not a team that people expected to be very good. And you're tying the Houston Texans, who was consensus. This is not just me saying this. Consensus expected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. They had, I think if you took an average of their predicted wins by everybody who did any kind of prediction segment on any podcast, the average would be somewhere between 3 and 5.
Right.
The 5 might be generous. That might be an outlier. I just don't think that tying them and losing to the Jags is a good indicator of where this thing is going.
I actually think the Jags are better than we think. I kind of like some of their pieces. Like, I think Etienne being healthy adds a dimension to their roster that wasn't there last year. And obviously a better coach. Peterson's just a vastly superior coach to Urban Meyer. Lawrence looks a lot better than he did at any point last year. And Christian Kirk looks like a stud. They paid a lot of money for him, but like he looked good yesterday. He looked unstoppable. The other thing, too, is at some point Reich has to answer for the fact that 6 quarterbacks have started in 6 years.
Yes.
Like, at some point, especially when they gave up all the capital that they gave up to get Carson Wentz just to say, nope, it's his fault. We got to get Carson Wentz out of here. We'll clean the whole thing up, blah, 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 blah. Reich and everybody involved with the Colts was successfully able to put the entire season on Carson Wentz last year. All right, well, what's your excuse this year? Is it, Matt Ryan? Is it all Matt Ryan's fault? I mean, at some point the coach has to be accountable for this. That they haven't solved this quarterback situation. They don't have anybody in position and waiting in the wings. They keep trying to fill in the blanks. And in the meantime, they've given up a lot of capital to do that. At some point, the coach has got to get something done or he's got to pay. So I'm not a big fan of Frank Reich. I'm not sure he's a good coach. I think we're not seeing the evidence there.
Speaking of bad coaching decisions, how about that Vikings timeout at the end of the half? Eagles are going to run the ball and go into half with 30 seconds left, and he calls the timeout. They give up another first down, and then the Eagles get on the field and kick field goal.
Yeah.
It's like Mike Zimmer all over again.
Yeah. O'Connell's going to have to learn very quickly that it is the problem, too, is some of these coaches, these offensive analytical coaches, like, they don't want to let a sleeping dog lie. Like, they're just like, hey, we could go to the half down 21-7. Let's just call it a day here. They're like, oh, no, if we get the ball back, we can run it down, and we have a 21% chance if we can just get to the 50. Just stop with all of that. Stop it. That's not there.
I'm
Case
more willing.
Exciting on Monday Night Football.
Finally, an elite quarterback. I will say that I'm more willing to accept a first-year head coach making timeout growing pains than I am an 8th-year head coach grumbling down the sideline calling a timeout in that situation. It's still inexcusable, and he's got to learn from it. But I'm more willing to forgive O'Connell than I was Zimmer in the time he'd had to fix that mistake.
My last toss-up for you. Go ahead, Zach.
Would you say tonight's performance is Leslie Frazier-like?
I think watching Leslie Frazier's defense, there's a lot of people who are lining up for Leslie Frazier's services. I also think it says a lot about Sean McDermott, the staff he's created, because Ken Dorsey has slid right into the OC role and has been really good. Like, through 2 games, it feels like he's pressing all the right buttons, calling all the right plays. I watched a good chunk of the first half of that game. They're mixing formations. They're doing all kinds of different stuff. And it's like, Ken Dorsey looks like a legitimate, through 2 games, a legitimately good offensive coordinator.
It's all about the U.
A good play caller. Last one. I have this written as most surprising team, but it could also be more heartwarming. I don't know what you want to call it. Most surprising team so far, the Giants or the Lions?
Well, I think the Giants are most surprising because they're 2-0.
Yeah.
I feel like the Lions have given 2 good fights. Obviously, they beat the Washington Cobra Commanders, but they gave the Eagles a hell of a game. And based on what we're seeing the Eagles do, I mean, that's why I kind of threw them in here.
But I think that, while the story is nice for the Lions, and nobody saw the Giants at 2-0.
You're right.
Right? I mean, in our team challenge, didn't they go in the last round? Yes, they're the last pick. Right?
Yes, that's true.
And so I think that's the more surprising one. And hey, they've got the Cowboys and a backup quarterback on Monday night next week. They're that close to being 3-0.
Oh my! And listen,
go ahead.
I
think they get the Jets week 4. I mean, could you imagine they could be 4-0?
Do you want Joe Flacco right now, though? Nobody wants to see Joe Flacco. Are you kidding? That guy's dangerous. Anyway.
Sorry, they get the Bears week 4.
Oh, boy. Oh, the elixir that cures everything. I love it. Daniel Jones, and the thing is that's impressive is that they're 2-0 with Daniel Jones not being very good. Like, I think he's been bottom 5, bottom 6 QB in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. But they're figuring it out because Barkley's been playing really well. Like, Barkley's been really good, and the defense has been pretty good.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a new quarterback there next year for Dable.
Is that a potential spot for Jimmy G?
That could be a Jimmy G spot.
It could be. I think it depends on how many games he wins this year and the Giants and Dable, and where they end up in the draft. Because, they keep winning some games, they might end up picking a lot later than they anticipated, and then maybe the guy they want's not there. So,
if that's the case, I'm going to throw a hot take out there. Kirk Cousins will be your starting quarterback in New York next year.
I do think that they're not ready to give up on Jones this year in the sense that maybe maybe Jones, because Jones makes 3 or 4 plays a game where you're like, that's good. Like, that's what star quarterbacks do. Like, he makes a few of those plays a game, but then he makes like 4 or 5 plays a game that are like, whoa, that's bad. Like, NFL quarterbacks don't make those mistakes. That's terrible. Listen to this
stat line for Josh Allen tonight. 26 of 38, 317 yards. 8.3 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he left early.
Yeah.
Now do Jalen Hurts.
That game's not over.
He's 17 for 20 for 251 and a touchdown, and he's run for 50 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Is that any good or what?
That's a full game and a half.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm with you. All right, that's what I got for that. Most surprising. Team challenge. Zach, do you want to give us a quick update on the team challenge through 2 weeks?
Yeah.
We can project tonight, and we can project tonight as well.
Yeah, so things have held pretty steady tonight. I'm going to go ahead and declare the Bills winners.
Yep.
So that's a point for Ryan.
All precincts are reporting, and that looks like that will be declared a blue state this evening. Thank you.
And you have both the Vikings and Eagles, so you'll pick up a point there. So it'll be I'll be in first still with 11.5, Ryan at 10, and Tim will be at 9.5. So about the same margin as we were at after week 1.
So it's getting tight, or it's about the same.
Tight.
It's very tight.
Yeah, I think it's going to go all year. I mean,
well, we're 3 elite football minds. 3 elite football minds. So that you expect it to be tight all year.
The surprise obviously has to be Ryan's got 2 wins out of the Giants with his last pick.
I was going to pick the Seahawks, and I switched to the Giants.
And the reality is, right, I mean, as we talked about, there's only a couple of 2-win teams. There's only a couple of teams that haven't won, right?
That's right.
Raiders, Panthers, Bengals, Titans, and Falcons. So it'll be an up and down year, I think, for a lot of teams in the middle. So it'll be fun to follow the team challenge.
It does look wide open. It does feel like there's 2 or 3 really good teams and then a whole bunch of the same after that.
Yep.
That's really what it looks like. All right, let's do some predictions. As we said, heading into tonight's game, and if this holds, you and I will pick up another win here if the Eagles win, Zach. So you'll go 4-1 for the week. I'll go 3-2. Ryan will go 1-4 for week number 1. So, Ryan, because you're in last place, I'll give you a first shot here in week 2. Bills at Dolphins. Bills are 4.5-point favorites. Dolphins are 2-0. Bills are 2-0. This is a matchup that 2 weeks ago I wouldn't have thought would have been interesting, but I'm intrigued by this one for this Sunday. Bills at Dolphins.
Yeah. Bills are too high. Give me the Dolphins.
Dolphins to cover or win or both?
To win.
Dolphins to win. I like it. Dolphins to win.
Not because I think they're a better team. It just feels like there's going to be there's always kind of one game where teams get really, really good, and it's the NFL. We have to be reminded it's the NFL, and the gap between really good and really bad is really thin.
It's true.
And they're both good teams, and I just think that the Dolphins just get the better of them in week 3.
Zach?
I think they're both 2-0. So I think Buffalo's going to beat them though. I just think Buffalo's defense is the difference here.
That's fair.
Yeah, I like Buffalo here too. I just think Buffalo. When we talk about there might be 3 good teams in the league or 2. I think Buffalo is 1-1. They are. I think they're that much better than most of the teams in the league.
There's a gap between the 1 and 2 there. If the Buffalo
I think so. I think so. I think they're legit. They're legit the best team in the league. I got the Bills winning that one as well. Lions at Vikings. Vikings are currently 7-point favorites before tonight's game, so that could change after tonight's game no matter how this finishes. Lions at Vikings, Zach.
It feels like too many points. I think the Vikings win, but I don't think they win by 7.
So you take the Lions to cover, Vikes to win.
Yep.
I like that. Zach. Or not Zach, Ryan.
Give me the Lions to win.
Lions to win. He's just sold out. He is buying stock in Lambeau. I'll tell you what.
Give me the Lions to win.
Lions to win. You are buying Dan Campbell something fierce too.
I just think the Lions have the Vikings number. It's just they're a team that matches up well against Minnesota. They have the last couple of years. I like them on the road, at home. It doesn't seem to matter. I mean, Minnesota might win. They're not going to win by 7. Zach said that already, but I'm going to take the Lions to win.
All right. I'm going to take the Vikings. I don't think 7. I think that number's coming down. I wouldn't be surprised if that's at like 4 by Friday, or 3.5. But I think they will win. I think the Vikings win this game. I think they'll bounce back, win at home, and I think you'll see a good game, a very good game. I would be surprised if that might be one of the better early games on Sunday. So I got the Vikings there. Packers, Bucks. Packers at Bucks. Bucks are currently 2.5-point favorites, but that might have been pre-Mike Evans. I wonder what this is going to be at game time. I think this could be pretty close to a pick 'em by then. We'll see. Ryan, Packers at Bucks.
I think Packers cover, Bucks win.
Tight game, like a 1-point win for the Bucks.
Yeah.
All right, give it a 1-point win for the Bucks, maybe. Zach.
I'm going to take Green Bay in this one. I think it just feels kind of like last year when they went out to San Francisco in a game where not a lot of people thought they would win, and after having the bad first week and playing better in week 2, so I'm gonna go Green Bay.
I still wonder if the injuries aren't a thing for Tampa. I think not having Evans for another week, and if you took Evans out of the mix with, like, we don't know what Godwin's situation is, we don't know what Julio Jones's situation is. You can't be down all 3 of those guys, even if you're at home against a team like Green Bay and expect to still win. So I'll take Green Bay to win this game in a surprise. I think they win it, I think by a touchdown. I think Tampa hasn't quite figured it all out yet, and they've made it work. I wonder if the injuries are too much, though. I still wonder about that. So give me that one. Cowboys at Giants. Giants right now, I cannot believe this. The Giants are 3-point favorites as of right now to the Cowboys on Monday Night Football next week. Bananas to me. They shouldn't be favored against hardly anybody. But they are 2-0, and they're against the Cowboys. So let's go Ryan. Where are we going? Hang on. Are we Zach? Are we Zach first? I'm sorry. Who was my first pick this time? Is it Zach?
Cooper Rush. I'm taking the Cowboys.
Taking the Cowboys to win it. Cooper Rush.
I'm a believer.
I love it. Ryan?
I'm also going to take the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think we're 3 Cowboy fans here, although
it feels shaky, but I think they win.
Let's not use the word fan, but
yeah.
I just, if I'm going to explain this one for a second, because I didn't explain my Packers pick, but I'll explain this one for a second. I just think defensively, they're going to get after the quarterback quite a bit, and I know how well Daniel Jones plays under pressure, and I'm going to take the Cowboys in that matchup.
I think you're right about that. I think I was on the fence here with this one because I wasn't sure where to go, but I think you're right. The defense of Dallas is better than the defense of the Giants. And if you're trusting, I don't think the difference between Rush and Jones is a ton right now. I really don't. I don't think the drop-off is that significant, so I think the quarterback battle kind of cancels each other out. I'll take the Cowboys to win there as well. Last one. I took this one as a good little palate cleanser because I'm not really sure what to make of this. The 49ers are at the Broncos. Broncos are 1-point favorites, practically a pick 'em, as Russ tries to beat the Jimmy G 49ers.
It almost feels like a must-win game for the Broncos.
I think so.
And that's why I think there's a lot of that, but I'm going to still say that the 49ers win. I'm a believer in Jimmy G as well.
Yeah, I think this is the game that Broncos defense gets exposed. I think Debo goes off. I think the Niners win.
See, I'm gonna take Denver. I feel like I think at some point Russ has to be worth. I mean, we got to see something out of Russ, and I think this is it. If you can't get it done in a big time spot against the Niners in a big game, then I think we've seen all we need to see through 3 games. And I want to see Hackett have a rebound. I want to see like him put his thoughts into this game and say, you know what, I'm gonna coach better. We're gonna find something out. We're gonna figure some stuff out and be better this week. I can't wait to see it. I hope it happens. I'm gonna root for it. I'm gonna take the Broncos to win that one.
Kirk being Kirk.
Yeah, there's that.
This one's just about over.
Yeah.
I'm so done with this quarterback.
The good news is we can get to bed early tonight.
Yeah, let's do the power rankings quickly. At least I think 2 weeks now we can come up with a top 5, right? I feel like we got that. Yep. All right, let's start with everybody's number 5 team. Who is that going to be?
I've got the 2-0 Buccaneers.
The 2-0 Buccaneers. I also have the Buccaneers at 5, so that makes sense. Ryan?
I'm going to go with the Dolphins at 5.
Yeah, okay. I have the Dolphins at 4, so this makes sense for me because I have Miami at 4 here. Give me them. I think I actually had them a little higher beforehand, but I think tonight's results are swaying me a bit on that even. I like you got to call a spade a spade. I was ready to call Baltimore the 3rd best team in the league yesterday. They got beat by Miami. I have to say Miami's better than Baltimore right now.
Yep, I have the Dolphins at 4.
Ryan, who do you have it for?
I have Tampa.
You have Tampa. So we've just flip-flopped those 2 teams. Okay. I think I see that pretty clearly. Number 3, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles, based on what I'm seeing. I think the Eagles are right now looking like the best team through 2 weeks. Just in the vacuum of the first 2 weeks of the NFL season, the Eagles look like the best team in the NFC.
I agree. They're also my 3 team.
My 3 team. Rhino?
I've got the Kansas City Chiefs.
The Chiefs at 3. Okay. And I have the Chiefs at 2. Zach, I'm assuming you have the Chiefs at 2?
I had the Chiefs at 1 going into tonight, but I have swapped them with the Bills game going how it has.
So you're going to go Chiefs at 2.
Chiefs at 2.
Okay. And Ryan, who do you have at 2 then?
At 2, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles.
So what you've seen tonight has moved you to think the Eagles are the 2nd best team in the league?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that because you think Minnesota's good? Or
yeah, I do think Minnesota's good. I think that I don't think that look, I think that they're probably not as good as they looked in week 1, but it's the truth lies between here and there, right? It's between this game and that game, and I think that they're a pretty good team. I don't think they're a great team, but I think that the Eagles exposing them like this is a coming out party. Obviously, as a Vikings fan, that hurts to say, but the Eagles are a really good team.
So that leaves number 1. I think we're all consensus number 1 here. Unanimous number 1. The Buffalo Bills are the number 1 team in the league. Yeah, absolutely. Josh Allen just looks like the MVP of the league through 2 weeks.
Yep.
He looks unstoppable. And Sean
Between him and Jalen Hurts.
Sean McDermott's a hell of a coach. I mean, goodness gracious. He's got his guys ready to play all the time. It just seems like. They don't lay a lot of eggs. So tip your cap there. All right, let's go to the Eliminator. We eliminated last week, and we're the only podcast in America, the world, that eliminates a team from playoff contention every week. We've seen it, and we're making snap decisions, and that's how we go. Last week, we eliminated the Atlanta Falcons. They're 0-2, so we feel valid there. I've got a few nominations this week. I feel like this pick moved a little bit as the week went along, but I think I'm settled in on my 1. I got a couple choices to kick around, but I feel really good about 1. So what do you guys want to do?
Let's hear your nominations.
So my number 1 nomination is the Houston Texans. And I think partly because going into the season, we thought this was a 4-win outfit at best. I've seen nothing in the first 2 weeks that makes me think they're not a 4-win outfit. They're going to fight. Like, Lovey's going to have them fighting. I have no doubt in my mind. Like, they could have won yesterday against Denver on the road, and they'll fight. I just don't think they have enough talent to beat teams. I don't think, after watching the Jags yesterday, I don't think they're better than the Jags. I don't think they're going to be. This Tennessee team's 0-2. I think that I still don't think they're better than the Titans in the division, and I think they're about at least the same as the Colts. So I just don't see them getting there. I don't see them winning more than 4 or 5 games. It feels like a very safe pick to eliminate them. Anybody want to tackle that? Throw somebody else out?
What are the other options, Ryan?
I'm going to throw two teams out there that I think we could talk about. I want to talk about the Chicago Bears.
The Bears could definitely be talked about.
They didn't look good week one. They sneaked out. They snuck out a win because of the swamp game at Soldier Field, and I thought they completely got their doors blown off by Green Bay. Even though they scored a couple of times in that game, they looked lost at parts of that game. And a team that looks lost in the NFL is not a team that's going to win very much. I just don't. You don't see the flashes with Chicago that you see with other teams. The other team that I want to talk about is the Seattle Seahawks. They had a good win. I think that division is strong enough that they're not good enough to win it. And I think the NFC, it might be wide open at the wild card, but I just don't think they're even close to the middle of the pack. So I would talk about eliminating Seattle, but I can understand why they might not be at the top of the list.
I've got two other teams to mention, and then I don't know if they're as low as these, but I think we need to talk about them quick. The Raiders are 0-2 in a division we think is going to be really good.
Yep.
In a conference that's going to be really good.
Yeah, and I don't know that we're ready to eliminate them yet. Also, I think, even though they won this week, we should talk about the Jets.
Yeah. With a minute and a half to go, the Jets were my pick in the Browns.
Right,
they would have been 0-2, and I would have said, screw you, Robert Saleh and Joe Flacco.
Yeah, well, Robert Saleh's been taking names.
Yep, he's got receipts.
He probably wrote your name down on the pod last week.
Probably did. I will say the one thing that the Jets have going for them, though, and this is where Ryan can peacock a little bit, Garrett Wilson looks like a really good receiver. And he looks like an actual playmaker. Like they have a guy who can actually make big plays for them, which makes them a factor. Same with Breece Hall. Like Hall made a couple of really big plays in that game, and you're like, wow, they got some guys that you kind of like, So that's where the Jets at least could feel good.
I'm going to take the opportunity to peacock a little bit because if you've watched any Ohio State football over the last 2 years, 3 years, you would have known that Garrett Wilson is that guy. He is explosive and shifty, and he's everything that teams look for in a draft pick for wide receiver in the NFL right now. He's just like Stephon Diggs. He's just like Justin Jefferson. He's that kind of player.
And he looked like it. Yesterday, he looked unstoppable. The Browns had no answers for him late in the game.
On the flip side, I have to eat some crow because I thought that Chris Olave was the better prospect coming out, and he looked like crap for New Orleans yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But again, who's throwing to him?
That's true.
Yeah, no, fair.
Can Flacco do this forever? And can Joe Flacco do this for sustained 3-4 more weeks? I don't know.
You can knock Jameis all you want, but Jameis put one in the breadbasket that should have been a 50-plus yard touchdown, and he drops it, fumbles it, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah, so that happens, right? I mean, we're not going to erase guys. That A.J. Brown catch pretty much seals it for a tie against me. I think it's the Jets. I'm not ready to eliminate them yet, but I do think that they're kind of on the edge there, and they're at least worth mentioning.
If you're already fighting for second place in your division, you're already behind the 8 ball in the eliminator because you're fighting for a wild card spot.
Yep.
But I just don't think they're good enough for a wild card spot right now. They're the third best team in that division.
The Jets are a safe elimination too if we ever wanted to go that route because they're not better than Buffalo, and based on this, they're not better than Miami. So they're already the third best team at best in the division, and we don't know if they're better than New England. We don't know that yet. So
I think you can make the same argument about the Bears.
That's true. I don't think the Bears to me look clearly the fourth best. Although, I don't think they're better than the Vikings, even though the Vikings are playing just terrible tonight. They're not. I don't think they're better. Obviously, they're not better than Green Bay. We saw that. And I think the Lions are good. I think the Lions are decent. So, I don't know what to make of that. That's the case against Houston is that the division is so bad that they might hang around a little bit, but God damn, that Houston team looks untalented, though. They in that great conference, I just feel like they're not going to beat anybody in that conference.
Yeah, they just have nobody. Davis Mills looks like he might be okay, but you got Brandon Cooks, but they have nobody.
Yeah. So those are 5 good nominations that we've put out here that I feel pretty good about. Like, I feel like all 5 of those teams are not making the playoffs. The Raiders are the one team that I would say are the 5th out of this that I'm like, oh, the Raiders have at least a little bit of a chance if they could catch some stuff on the right in the right direction in the next couple weeks. But the other 4 I feel like are just, they're not making it based on what I've seen. And listen, the Indianapolis Colts, I'll put them in that list too. The Indianapolis Colts stink. They absolutely stink. But I think if you had to make me choose, I think Houston's worse than Indianapolis. If I had to choose. Like, if they played 10 times, I feel like Indy should beat Houston 7 times. That'd be my thought.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree that they'll beat them that often, but I got to go with Houston on this. I think they're the worst of the bunch.
All right, I'll defer to you guys on this week.
So let's go Houston. So, okay, we got Houston. So Atlanta,
what?
Houston, out. Atlanta, Houston, you have been eliminated. Houston, the tribe has spoken. Time for you to go. You are out of here. That leaves 30 teams in the running to win the Super Bowl based on our calculations. Some of these teams that we kicked around this week, trust me, we'll be kicking you around next week if we don't see any momentum the other direction. So that'll be that. Good podcast this week, guys. Always good to talk to you. This Monday night thing's kind of working out okay. Kind of dig talking to you guys on a Monday night over the Monday Night Football game. It's kind of fun. Big thing as we head out here today, I want to make sure that you're checking out us on the Podbean site, which is timpodcast.podbean.com. That's where you'll see all of the archives, all of the Peak Cinema episodes. Every episode of the podcast that's been done is there. If you go to iTunes or Spotify, hey, great. I'd love it if you go there. But you're only getting our last 20 episodes if you go to those areas, which I'm totally okay with. If you want to do that, subscribe, like, leave a comment, share it out, that sort of thing. I would really appreciate it if you did that. And then go back and give some of our previous stuff a listen, whether it's last season's pods, if you're looking for receipts on Zach, Ryan, and myself, but also if you want to check out Peak Cinema. That will be making a return soon, I promise you. Lauren is gearing back up now that she's hatched that child. We're going to get Lauren back on the pod here momentarily, and it's going to be great. So please do that. Rate it. Give us some love. We would really appreciate it. That will do it for the podcast this week, everybody. Thanks for listening. On behalf of Zach, Ryan, this is Tim saying keep your head up, and we will see you.